So our reading this morning is going to be, it's called The Journey to Bethlehem. So it is a very nice descriptive passage of Mary and Joseph on their way to Bethlehem. Some of you may be familiar in the Bible. There's a passage called the Census Edict. And that was, there was a point at which the Romans called for the census. And as you guys know, a census is when they find out how many people are here and they ask basic questions. Everybody had to go to the town where they were from. And, Joseph was like, this is horrible news, because Mary was, pretty far along in her pregnancy. But Mary knew the prophecy, which was that the child would be born in Bethlehem. So she immediately lit up, like, oh my God, this is so cool. And he was, quite distressed about having to, because, you had to walk, basically. And I don't know how far Bethlehem is from Jerusalem or Nazareth, but, it was like an overnight walk, at least, in the winter. So this is what it looked like. Mary is on a little gray donkey. She's all enveloped in a heavy mantle. In front of the saddle there is the fitting already seen in her journey to Hebron, and on it there is the little trunk with the basic essential things. Joseph is walking on the side holding the reins. "Are you tired?" he asks her now and again. Mary looks at him smiling and replies, "No, I'm not." The third time she adds, "You must be tired walking." "Oh, me? It's nothing for me. I was only thinking that if I found another donkey, you would have been more comfortable, and we could have traveled faster. But I just could not find another one. Everybody needs a mount these days." "But take heart, Mary, we will soon be in Bethlehem. Ephrathah is beyond that mountain." They are both silent. The Virgin, when she does speak, seems to concentrate on internal prayer. "Are you cold?" asks Joseph when the wind starts blowing. "No, thank you." But Joseph is not too happy. He touches her feet, which are shod in sandals and are hanging down along the side of the donkey, and can hardly be seen coming out from under her long dress. And he must feel them cold because he shakes his head and takes a blanket which he has across his shoulders and envelopes Mary's legs in them, and he spreads it also on her lap so that her hands may be kept warm, being covered by the blanket and her mantle. They meet a shepherd who cuts across the road with his herd, moving from the grazing ground on the right-hand side of the road to the left. Joseph bends down to say something to him. The shepherd nods in assent. Joseph takes the donkey and drags it behind the herd into the grazing ground. The shepherd pulls a coarse bowl out of his knapsack. He milks a big sheep with a swollen udder and hands the bowl to Joseph, who offers it to Mary. "May God bless both of you," exclaims Mary, "you for your love and you for your kindness. I will pray for you." "Are you coming from far?" "From Nazareth," replies Joseph. "And where are you going?" "To Bethlehem." "Well, a long journey for a woman in her state. Is she your wife?" "Yes, she is." "Have you got a place where to go?" "No, we haven't." "Oh, that's bad. Bethlehem is overcrowded with people who have come from all over to register there, or are on their way to register elsewhere. I don't know whether you will find lodgings. Are you familiar with the place?" "Not very." "Well, I will explain it to you." For her, and he points to Mary. "Find the hotel, but it will be full. But I will tell you just the same to guide you. It is in the square, in the largest one. The main road will take you to it. You can't miss it. There is a fountain in front of it. It's long and low, with a big door. It will be full. But if you do not find room in the hotel, or if any of the houses, go round to the back of the hotel towards the country. There are some stables in the mountains, which are used sometimes by merchants to keep their animals there on their way to Jerusalem when they don't find room in the hotel. They are damp and cold, and there are no doors, but, well, there's always a shelter, because your wife, well, she can't be left on the road. Perhaps you will find room there, some hay to sleep on, and for the donkey, and may God guide you." "And may God give you joy," answers Mary. Joseph instead replies, "Peace be with you." They take the road again. A wider valley can be seen from the crest they have climbed over. In the valley, up and down the soft slopes surrounding it, there are many houses. It is Bethlehem. "Here we are in David's land, Mary. Now you will be able to rest. You look so tired." "No, I was thinking." I think Mary gets hold of Joseph's hand and says to him with a blissful smile, "I really think that the time has come. Oh, Lord of mercy, what shall we do?" "Well, don't be afraid, Joseph. Be steady. See how calm I am? But you must be suffering a lot." "Oh no, I am full of joy, such a joy so great, so beautiful, so uncontainable, that my heart is thumping and thumping and is whispering to me, 'He is coming, He is coming.' It says so at each beat. It is my child knocking at my heart and saying, 'Mother, I am here, and I am coming to give you the kiss of God. Oh, what a joy, my dear Joseph. But Joseph is not joyful. He is thinking of the urgent need to find shelter, and he quickens his pace. And he goes from door to door asking for a room. Nothing. They're all full. They reach the hotel. Even the rustic porches surrounding the large inner yard are full of campers. Joseph leaves Mary on the donkey inside the yard, and he goes out looking in other houses. He comes back thoroughly disheartened. He has not found anything. The fast winter twilight is beginning to spread its shadows, and Joseph implores the hotel keeper. He implores also some of the travelers. He points out that they are all healthy men, that there is a woman about to give birth to a child. He begs them to have mercy. Nothing. There is a rich Pharisee who looks at them with obvious contempt, and when Mary goes near him, he steps aside as if he had been approached by a leper. Joseph looks at him, and his face blushes with disdain. Mary lays her hand on his wrist to calm him and says, "Don't insist. Let us go. God will provide." They go out, and they follow the wall of the hotel, and they turn into a little street which runs between the hotel and some poor houses, and they turn behind the hotel, and they look for those stables. At last, here are some grottos, kind of cellars, I would say, rather than stables, because they are so low and damp. And the best ones have already been taken. Joseph is utterly disheartened. "A Galilean," an old man shouts, "down there at the end, under those ruins, there is a den. Perhaps there is nobody in it yet." They hurry to the den. It is really a den. Among the ruins of an old building there is a hole, beyond which there is a grotto, an excavation in the mountain. Rather than a grotto, it seems to consist of the foundations of the old building with the roof formed by rubble supported by coarse tree trunks. There's hardly any light, and to see better, Joseph pulls out a tinder and flint, and he lights a little lamp that he takes out of his knapsack. He goes in and is greeted by a bellow. Excuse me. "Come in, Mary, it is empty. There is only an ox." Joseph smiles. "It's better than nothing." Mary dismounts from her donkey and goes in. Joseph has hung the little lamp on a nail of one of the supporting trunks. They see the vault covered with cobwebs, the soil, stamped, ramshackle earth with holes, rubbish, excrement. The soil is strewn with straw. In the rear, the ox turns his head round and looks with his large, quiet eyes, while some of the hay is hanging from its lips. There is a rough seat and 2 big stones in a corner near a loophole. The blackness in that corner is a clear sign that a fire is generally lit there. Mary goes near the ox. She is cold. She puts her hands on its neck to feel its warmth. The ox bellows but does not stir. It seems to understand. And also when Joseph puts it aside to take a large quantity of hay from the manger and make a bed for Mary, the ox remains calm and quiet. The manger is a double one, that is, there is one out of which the ox eats, and above it there is kind of a shelf with spare hay, which Joseph pulls down. The ox makes room also for the donkey, tired and hungry as it is, and starts eating at once. Joseph discovers also a battered bucket turned upside down. He goes out because he saw a little stream outside, and he comes back with some water for the little donkey. He then takes possession of a bunch of twigs in a corner, and he tries to sweep the floor with it. Next, he spreads the hay and makes a bed with it near the ox in the most sheltered and dry corner. But he realizes that the poor hay is damp, and he sighs. He then lights a fire. With the patience of Job, he dries the hay a handful at a time, holding it near the fire. Mary is sitting on the stool. She's tired. She watches and smiles. The hay is now ready. Mary sits down more comfortably on the soft hay, with her back leaning against one of the tree trunks. Joseph completes the furnishings, hanging his mantle as a curtain on the hole that serves as a door. It is a makeshift protection. He then offers some bread and cheese to the Virgin, and he gives her some water out of a flask. "Sleep now," he says. "I will sit up and watch that the fire does not go out. There is some wood, fortunately. Let us hope that it will burn and last. Thus I will be able to save the oil of the lamp." Mary lies down obediently. Joseph covers her with her own mantle and with the blanket that she had round her feet earlier. "But you, Joseph, you will be cold." "No, Mary, I'll be near the fire. Try and rest now. Things will be better tomorrow." Mary closes her eyes without insisting. Joseph creeps into his little corner, sits on the stool with some dry shoot near him. There are very few. I do not think they will last long. They are placed as follows. Mary is on the right-hand side, with her back to the door, hidden by the tree trunk, and the ox which has lain down on the litter. Joseph is on the left side, towards the door, and since he is facing the fire, his back is turned towards Mary. But he turns round now and again to look at her, and he sees she is lying quietly, as if she were sleeping. He breaks the little sticks as noiselessly as possible and throws them out one at a time onto the little fire, so that it may not go out and may give some light, and yet make the wood last longer. There is only the dim light of the fire, at times bright and at times very faint. The lamp, in fact, has been put out, and in the half-light only the whiteness of the ox and of Joseph's hands and face can be seen. All the rest is a confused mass in the dull, dim light. So, I hope you enjoy these stories because it makes it so much more real. When you can feel, if you've ever been in a situation like that where you've had to sleep outside and it's cold and it's damp. And this story really gives us a very good perspective on the balance of the type of energies we're trying to approach this path with. Because you have Mother Mary that through the whole passage, I mean, it took us about 8 or 9 minutes to read it. But I think to walk from Nazareth to Bethlehem is probably something in the neighborhood of 15 or 20 hours, let's say, on a donkey. So if you've ever done any long road trips in a car with heated seats, you see there's a contrast, right? And still, it's a long, 20 hours in the car, it's tiring. So imagine walking in the middle of December or late December. And this morning I looked up the typical weather in Bethlehem in the winter, and it ranges between about 45 and 53 degrees. So, not really that comfortable, but not bitter cold. At times it could probably get cold. And how is it that Mary is peaceful? And that she's not going, this is crazy, like, I'm carrying the Messiah. How is it that this is not easier for me? She's really just focused on the joy of what's going to happen. And when they get to Bethlehem, she doesn't seem dismayed over the fact that there's no room in the hotel. She doesn't, quietly pray to God like, what's going on? Like, you couldn't get us a room? I mean, how hard can that be? Type thing. She just goes with it. She doesn't really exert any negativity. She tries to calm Joseph down when he gets a little bit riled up. So we could look at Mary in this instance as really representing the divine soul in us that feels the truth, that knows the truth. She is at peace with the outer circumstances because the inner experience for her is so meaningful and so now. So what about Joseph? Well, Joseph is tending to all the outer things. As he's walking, he wants to make sure that her feet are warm, and he wants to assure her, and he wants to get some milk when the time comes, and he reads the shepherd, and the shepherd gives him directions, and when he gets to the hotel, he knocks diligently, even though the shepherd said you probably won't find a room. He goes about doing everything in the material world to try to bring comfort to his wife. And he does get a little bit irritated. So we say that Joseph represents the conscious mind that has been transformed. The conscious mind that has been transformed does access the Christ mind, but it is not the Christ mind. So at times he gets a little irritated. So we want to give ourselves some room for that, because he's not quite at the same consciousness as Mary, and he didn't have the experience of the angel coming to him, and he didn't have the experience of sort of waking up and realizing that he is pregnant with the Holy Spirit. That kind of stuff, that changes you. So he still has a tendency to get a little bit, disdained and bothered. But he doesn't let that stop the movement and the progress. He is pretty much focused on one thing, which is to provide a comfortable place for his wife. So imagine if this was the dynamic that you had within you, that you have a conscious mind that is interested in providing a comfortable space for your soul, and your soul has really only one focus, which is the service to God, and not an obsession with the outer and how it doesn't really work the way we want. That is a beautiful combination. Okay, so that takes work to get to. But now we ask ourselves, well, why would God make it happen this way? Why would God end up not having them a room in the hotel, and they end up in some damp sort of cellar? There's very little light, there's wet hay, there's an ox, there's excrement, it's not a very glamorous place. Now, what I don't want to do is try to explain exactly why that is, because I can't really say for sure. But if we follow the way that Mary responded to it, she just went with it. And there is something incredibly peaceful and beautiful about her energy through the whole passage. So I would like to encourage you to think in these terms, that your conscious mind, you can come up with a lot of reasons why this is not how it's supposed to be. And yet, taking the example of Joseph, he accepts it and he does what is necessary to try to make the best of it. He doesn't proclaim a lot of negativities. I mean, he probably is feeling a little grumbly. But it seems like he's mostly feeling that way because of his care for his wife. He seems to be like, well, I can handle this. This isn't that big of a deal, but I really don't want my soul to suffer. So I'm going to try to do everything to minimize the sufferings of my soul, my wife. Can we accept, what God is putting us through as we make this journey of coming into realization of the Christ? Now, this gave rise in my meditation to speak about something I've probably talked about before, which is the law of cause and effect. And when you really understand this, and when you really study it, you relax, because you go, nothing is being done to you. And if it is being done to you, you go, praise God that I cannot see everything, because that mystery, when it becomes revealed, is very exciting. When you see how things played out that you could not understand, and you let go of the temptation to want to blame God for giving you this short end of the stick. And I had this experience when I was traveling, because I would have liked to have a lot of conversations about God, but it was hard because people haven't done a lot of focusing on that. So it's pretty much like, do you believe in God, yes or no? And once in a while, there might be somebody that was like kind of moving a little more into a state of trying to be in greater connection. But I heard, probably several stories, and I've heard this over the years, where people were like, well, I used to believe in God, but then something happened and it really rattled my faith, and now I'm kind of not sure. Somebody was in a car accident, somebody got cancer, or somebody died. Some calamity that they believe was not fair happened. And they go, well, there must not be a God, because if there was a God, how could such a thing happen? That is really tragic when you allow that kind of thing to happen. Because, as a priest, I go, wow, how can I condemn God with almost no understanding spiritually? That something occurs, I don't have any real clue about how things work. That may sound a little arrogant, but I actually think about that with myself. I think there's so much more to learn about how manifestation works. But I know more than I used to. And what I know for sure is that one of the worst things you can do is something happens and you automatically assume you know everything about it, and therefore it's God's fault. And I never actually even brought this up with anybody who spoke to me about it when I was traveling, because, it's not helpful. Because I understand that people make those decisions because they're hurt, and they need something to hold on to make sense of it. And so they may decide, well, there's no God because I can't put my faith in something that does that. People have this idea that, if I'm a Christian or if I'm connected to God, all good things must come to me. Where is the responsibility that you have as a soul to develop your conscious mind, to realize the divinity of your soul, that is Mother Mary? We don't start that way. You have to work to develop this these relationships and this consciousness. And how cool is it that you do have to do that? Because first of all, I know that human beings like to work at things and like to be rewarded for our work. Yes, there's always a time where you go, wow, wouldn't it be great if I could get up tomorrow and didn't have to do anything, and I can go to the beach and I can, drink as much alcohol and it didn't really affect me, and then I could find the person I really want to be in love with, and everything was just given to me, and it would just be this ideal life. It doesn't really work obviously it doesn't work that way, and that is not satisfying. Like, we do like to work for things and have them given to us by that work. There's something very satisfying about that. And as you know, and this is not a secret, but in the marketing world, things that are given for free are not valued. And God must know that we enjoy working towards things. Okay, go all the way to the other side. You're like, well, I've been working at it for 20 years and nothing's happening. Like, okay, I get it. The work part, sort of okay, but can we get on with the good part? Well, this is where you have a responsibility to learn how the law of cause and effect actually works. That every effect in your life is preceded by a cause. And that is an immutable law. Now, we should start off by going like, I don't really understand the depth at which I have to go to identify the causes which lead to these effects. That would be humble. You guys know me, and there are certain things that I get very excited about. Like, I like working on stuff. I like working on my squash game. I like working on my Spanish. I like working on my spirituality. I just find the thrill of digging deeper and deeper to understand the causes so that the effects that I desire might manifest. I just find that, I can't imagine a point in my life where I will not be enamored by that, because there's an infinite beauty to how God has given us this system. If you're somebody who can't stand the idea of having to figure that out, and you think it should just be given to you, that if you say, well, I want this effect, so why is it not showing up? Then, that to me is like somebody who goes like, I can't stand studying, I don't really care about school, so I'm just going to quit after high school. And then 10 years later, they're like, why can't I get a decent job? Why can't I make any money? Well, you kind of gave up. And God did not force you to give up, but God allowed you to give up. Well, if God really loved me, He wouldn't allow me to drop out. You see, you don't understand. That's not how it works. God allows you to do what you want. And what you'll discover, which most of you have begun to discover, is the foundation for what you believe then contributes to the effects that you manifest. So we go, okay, so everything is contained within. All the mysteries are contained within. If I want to have this kind of life that I want, and I'm not saying everybody should want to be a priest. Let's say you want to have a partner and you want to have a good family and you want to have some kids and all that. Okay, you have to study. That's the effect that I want. How do I manifest that? What are the causes that lead to that? Or I want to excel in my career. I want to be at this level of earning. That stuff is all fine. I don't have a problem with it. But you have to understand that there are causes that lead to those effects. And every one of us is going to have a few causes that are just really hard to figure out. I mean, that's what I've discovered. I don't think God makes it that way, but it just turns out that all of us have a few causes that are like, you feel like you're pounding your head against the wall because you can't figure out why this effect does not follow everything that you're doing right. I think we should start off by going like, maybe I'm not doing everything right. Maybe it's actually happening and I can't see it because I really want it to be this way. It should look this way. There's a couple of stories I want to share with you. The first one was back when I was 39, and I had sort of reached a point where I was like, well, maybe I should get serious about drawing a woman into my life and trying to start a family or something like that, because I kind of wasn't sure what I should be doing in my life. And I made a pretty strong prayer, and I did a visualization, and I ended up at the Center of Light in Oakland. I think God heard my prayer as like, you want love at the highest level, which I think that's probably part of how I said it. It's like, I want a relationship that's just really right at the edge of my spiritual ability, something that challenges me, but somebody who's also engaged at that level. And instead, I got plopped into this mystical path. And ultimately, I think God was like, well, you think your prayer looks like this when it's answered, but I think it looks like this. And I go, praise the Lord, that's so much better. than I thought. Now, actually, there was a woman. You guys have read my book. There was a woman there, and I thought God had a sense of humor, going like, I'm going to keep you on the path because you think it's about this woman. And I can look back at that and go like, that probably was really effective, actually. Well, I know it was effective at times when I probably wanted to drop out because I was still hanging in there thinking, once I get to be a priest, then we should be able to start dating. So that didn't work out. However, it did work out because I really feel like I do have true love inside. And I feel like I have sacrificed, or I've accepted the sacrifice, that in order to get to this place, I have not had a physical partner. And I'm okay with that. I'm not saying that would be okay for you. If you want that, I think you should go for it. I knew most of my life that I was kind of into it, kind of not. Like, I like the freedom of living as I do. So it wasn't a huge deal. But waking up and going like, oh, my prayer was answered in a way that was so much beyond what I thought. Remember last week, Mother Mary was praying. She's like, hurry up and bring the Messiah. She's thinking she's going to be helping the mother of the Messiah. So I feel like I relate to how my prayer, I thought it was going to be answered like this, and instead the angel comes and goes like, well, it's actually you. And I really believe that God does accelerate your prayer, magnifies your prayer. But you have to be willing to say yes, and you have to be willing to surrender to it and see where that takes you. And that takes a lot of guts. I would imagine, all of us in this room at times go, yeah, this mystical church, whatever you want to call it, it does feel right. It feels right for me, for my soul. In the same way that Mary's going like, she's not focusing on walking on the donkey and it's 45 degrees and there's no hotel room. She's like, this is right. My child is coming and this is the Messiah of the world, is going to give me the kiss of God. And like, how beautiful is that? And I really believe that we come here every week because we go, this is it. Okay, so if this is it, then we've got to kind of deal with the challenges that come up as a result of knowing that this is it. And you have to have a clarity in your conscious mind to arrange your life, just the way Joseph is running around trying to arrange everything. You have to arrange your life to allow for the soul in you to have the experience. And that means people in your life, like the Pharisee who looks over at them disdaining because she's pregnant. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But that's what's going to happen. There's going to be people that cross your path that irritate you, that have an impression about you. There's going to be circumstances that come about that you go like, God, I'm on the path. Why does this not work out? I think it doesn't work out because we don't have everybody on the planet on board with this. And everybody gets free will. So there's a lot of disjointed energy. Everybody's sort of trying to get the things that they want, but not necessarily realizing that facilitating the lives of other people tends to open the channels for you to get what you want. That's the essence of service. Let me focus on giving of myself what is needed. And then I trust that God will give what is needed to me. Now you also have to use the conscious mind to figure out what are the causes in me that lead to these outer effects. And then you've got to change them. You've got to do that work. Imagine if you didn't have to do that work and it was random, which is what a lot of people do when they say, well, God, how did you let this happen? I can imagine God going, I let people do what they want to do. I mean, when there's a prayer for intervention, generally I intervene. This is God speaking. But also there are prayers that do not get answered. Like, could you imagine a 12-year-old boy going like, my prayer is that I don't have to go to school, I can eat chicken fingers all day, I can play video games, I can sleep in, and just keep piling on. I can go see movies. I mean, like, that might seem like an ideal life for somebody who's 12. And the parent, wanting to be as kind, do they go, all right, let's make it happen? No, they go, that's horrible. You're not going to be happy. I mean, you might be happy for one day. But malnutrition, no social life, no development. And at some point in the future, that child is lost. Probably really good at, Auto Theft 16 or whatever these games are. I really know how to steal a car at the highest level. Well, that's good, man. It's going to take you places. You got to leave room for the emotional strife of living in this world. And you've got to maturely coach yourself out of that hole. That could be one of the reasons that a lot of people just do not persist on this path. Because that work is like, it sometimes can seem never ending. And that's where, there's indulgences that help you get through that. It's like, well, sugar and alcohol and pornography and naps and shopping. All that stuff is because I got to get out of this emotional turmoil. And I say there's a better way to get out of emotional turmoil, and that is by bringing love and consciousness to it. And listening to it, and validating it, but not letting it define what your life is. So what Serena was saying about anger, is like, yeah, you're going to feel angry sometimes. Joseph felt disdain at this Pharisee, but he didn't act on it. He just like, okay, we got to move on. So you acknowledge that, yeah, that was not cool. But we're not going to give in to that and let that define our day. And we're not going to then go like, well, okay, because I'm angry and now I'm going to have this triple dessert coffee just to comfort myself. I mean, you want to have a triple dessert coffee once in a while, whatever. I don't really mind. But I don't want you to make that as your go-to thing as a way to deal with the strife of your life. Like, let's mature here. Let's bring consciousness and do the work. Because over time, the pull of those things will be much less because you've developed patterns of being able to get out. And there's incredible liberation when you realize, like, oh, I have this huge amount of freedom to create my life. But I have to figure out how the system works. And then I have to play hard. When I say play hard, I mean I got to put my full heart into it. One last story I want to share with you when I was away, because many of you have known, I've told you that one of the hardest things when I was traveling is finding a place to stay that I could meditate consistently. Like sometimes I like to meditate in the morning, and sometimes in the afternoon, and sometimes in the evening, and sometimes at night. So basically all the time. I would like to have that option, Well, people are like, well, there's a little bit of traffic between 6:30 and 8, and then it's kind of quiet after that, so you should be fine. I think the person upstairs, works a sewing machine at noon, so, you should be fine until noon. It's like, I want a place that's just quiet. So I was looking for a place in Bocas del Toro, Panama, and I was biking around and checking out all these places. And I met this guy, and he had a place in this area called Saigon Bay. And I don't know why it's called Saigon Bay, but it was an area where there was more locals, and it was less sort of like the tourists and the parties, and there were no clubs there and stuff like that. So I liked this guy. We went and we checked out his place. He said, well, me and my girlfriend live upstairs, and you could rent the downstairs, and the price was pretty fair. And when I was there, it felt pretty quiet. I mean, there's a lot of houses close by, or they don't really look like houses, but they're construction things. And seemed kind of quiet. I liked the guy, and the house was pretty cool. And I noticed there was a fan, so I could run the fan for a little bit of white noise. So I was pretty into it. And then as I was getting ready to leave the place where I was staying, the guy who owned it says, so, where did you find another place to stay? I said, yeah, I'm looking at this place in Saigon Bay. And he said, well, just so you know, like, there's kind of like the drug dealer culture lives over there. And also, like, in the morning, this is right on the water, a lot of the boats, like, fire up pretty early. So if you don't mind that, you should be okay, but just be careful. Now, I felt that was the hand of God reaching me to go, like, you're probably not going to be happy there. So part of me was like, I got to go back to searching. And it's like, I didn't like to have to go back to searching, but also I didn't want to commit to a month of somewhere where I feel nervous about coming home because there's drug dealers, and every morning I've got to sort of like just, grip my pillow for an hour and a half while all the boats get ready. So I trusted that this was the messenger of God saying, keep looking. So I go back, change my, whatever I had with me, my bag, I go back out on my bike, and I just started looking again. And eventually, I don't know if it was that day or the next day, because I didn't have that much time to get out. I arrived at this place, and there was no sign or anything, but it was a building. And so I drove by it, and there was a woman putting the garbage out, and she said, can I help you? I'm like, do you guys by chance have any places to rent? And she's like, well, how'd you find us? I'm like, I'm actually just biking by. She's like, well, we have some apartments. I'm like, okay, sounds good. So she showed me, a couple of the apartments. And she had this vibe about her, like what I would call the Christian vibe. She was really sweet, and she had sort of a glow about her, and she was just a kind-hearted person. And eventually we struck a deal, and it was about $850 a month, which was pretty good for a two-bedroom place. And it turns out her and her husband were Jehovah's Witnesses, and they were doing this mission trip. And was nobody else staying there, and it was right on the ocean, and yet it was far enough from the town. I mean, it really ended up being perfect. And what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is like, be prepared to change things up when you get a message that it's not right. Whether that message is an inner nudging, or you feel the urge to share something, you're not sure why you're sharing. Why did I tell this guy I'm moving out to Saigon Bay? I don't know, it just sort of came out of my mouth. And then he gave me some guidance, and I went, that feels true. That feels right. So back to the drawing board. Don't get irritated too long when you have to go back to the drawing board. Something you thought was going to be it turns out to not be it. Just be willing to let God gently nudge you towards the things that you want. And it works out.